Hello, good morning, afternoon, and evening to all our distinguished guests and participants. I would like to welcome you all to Modeling Healthy Creative Scene to Build Back Better webinar, a side event of the 77th session of Commission of ESCAP, organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia. The aim of this webinar is to discuss the relationship between creative economy sector and the social post-pandemic economic recovery effort in the Asia and the Pacific. In this session, we hope to explore the answer of how the creative economy sector can participate and contribute to the post-pandemic economic development and recovery. Before we start, I would like to remind all participants in this webinar to mute their microphone, and all of the questions for this session can be sent through the link that we can display on the chat box. Thank you. Without further ado, I would like to invite Her Excellency Ibu Arwida Ali Syabana, Executive Secretary of the UNESCAP, to the floor to give her welcoming remarks. Ibu Arwida, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon from Bangkok. Selamat pagi, selamat sore. Distinguished delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my pleasure to welcome you to this Commission session side event on modeling healthy creative economy scene to build back better, organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia and ESCAP. Since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, the Asia-Pacific region experienced a contraction in GDP growth last year, especially, causing significant socio-economic impact as well as vulnerability across the member states. Now, achievement of SDG is falling short of the 2020 milestone, as highlighted in the recently launched ESCAP Asia Pacific SDG Progress Report that we launched last month in March. Lessons learned from the pandemic is the need to build back better with, I think this is the key words, resilience, inclusiveness, inclusivity, and sustainability. In pursuing regional recovery, the creative economy sector presents opportunities to build back better. For example, during the pandemic, many people look up on artistic hobby, read books, watch program on digital platform, and so on. Yeah? This helps sustain the creative economy. However, SDG dimensions of the creative economy should be explored in greater detail, such as its impact on employment, inequalities, education, gender, and youth employment opportunities. Yeah, again, in countries such as Indonesia, we have this so-called youth bulge. Yeah? So the demographic structure is, I think, dominated by youth. The creative economy industry contribute increasingly to the economy. If I may to refer to UNCTAD, the global market for creative goods reached about $509 billion in 5 years ago, 2015, after more than doubling from $208 billion in 2002. Out of 10 developing economies ranked by UNCTAD, 9 come from our region, Asia Pacific. The East and Southeast Asia exported about $228 billion in creative goods alone. In addition, aside from commercial value, creative economies present opportunities for social value creation by promoting cultural understanding as well as diversifying economies. So in closing, again, if I may, this was before COVID, for sure, in 2019, I recall my visit back to Jakarta, but at that time also to take up on my role as secretary for that particular visit. And I had the opportunity to launch ESCAP British Council report on building an inclusive and creative economy in Indonesia. And last year in 2020, the United Nations adopted a resolution endorsed by member states declaring the 2021 the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development, which was tabled by Indonesia. Yeah? It was also backed by many member states, member countries in the Asia-Pacific region. So in closing, may I take this opportunity to thank again the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia and government of Indonesia overall and supporting member states for your leadership on this very important agenda. ESCAP, along with UN family, stands ready to work with governments and all stakeholders in advancing the creative economy so that we recover better together from the pandemic in our region and beyond. I wish you a very successful event. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ibu Armida, for your welcoming remarks. Next, I would like to invite His Excellency Bapak Febrian Rudiat, Director General for Multilateral Cooperation, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, to the floor to give his opening remarks. Bapak Febrian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Her Excellency Ibu Armida Ali Syabana, Executive Secretary of UNESCAP, Bapak Wisnu Bawa Tarunajaya, Deputy Minister for Resources and Institution, Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy of the Republic of Indonesia, honorable panelists and moderator, Ms. Carolina Quintana from UNCTAD, Dr. Dina Deliana from GISING, Ms. Mo Shiba from UNESCO, Ms. Malaya del Rosario from British Council Philippines, Ms. Ria Tri Sulistiani from Peppermoon Puppet, and Mr. Jonathan Wong from UNESCAP. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I wish to extend a very warm welcome to all of you for attending this side event, and also to thank Ibu Armida Ali Syabana and UNESCAP Secretariat for working closely with us in preparing this virtual discussion. Our event this afternoon is part of the International Year of the Creative Economy for Sustainable Development 2021, as designated by the UN General Assembly Resolution number 74198. And it also fits well with the theme of the 77th Commission session of UNESCAP, which is Building Back Better in Asia and the Pacific. Indeed, the creative economy is one of the sectors that has been negatively affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Its reliance on direct customer experience and its character, as driven mostly by MSMEs, freelancers, and part-time workers, has made it vulnerable to external shock and physical lockdown. It is therefore our hope that our discussion today can generate ideas and identify best practices on how to nurture and develop healthy and resilient creative scenes so that eventually creative scenes can emerge as a new sustainable growth area that contributes to the achievement of the 2030 Agenda. Finally, I would like to encourage all UNESCAP member states to ensure inclusive, meaningful, and impactful implementation of the International Year that enable us to make beneficial progress for all creative players. I thank you.
Thank you, Pak Febrian, for your opening remarks. Next, I would like to invite Bapak Wisnu Bawa Tarunajaya, the Deputy Minister for Resources and Institution from Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of the Republic of Indonesia, to the floor to give his keynote speech. Bapak Wisnu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greeting to all of you. Sawadee-kap. Excellency Ibu Armida, Pak Febrian, and all colleagues at the UNESCAP, Excellency and colleagues at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia, all speakers and ladies and gentlemen. It is our pleasure to welcome you to the side event at the UNESCAP. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to our colleagues at the Indonesian Embassy in Bangkok, Thailand, and the UNESCAP committee for their effort in preparing today's event. Creativity borns from the place where survival is the core of its journey. We can see how the world is being tested with this cruel pandemic, testing our ability to survive and testing our competence to create solutions that is timely and immediate. That also applies to the landscape of our creative scene. We expect that creativity rises from the place where all creative are gathered, where they could do brainstorming, practicing new moves, carve, and walk, and ultimately producing creative work that is valuable and enjoyable. The reality, however, is far better than we expected. Thousands of creative jobs were slashed and burned. Support were lacking, and audiences were isolated. Pandemic pushed the global community into a standstill, and we can see many stories where creators were impacted due to this reality. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to support our creators better. We need to protect their room for innovative creation so that they are able to produce work that are valuable for the community, entertaining to the public, and allowing freedom of expression to be nourished. This COVID-19 pandemic should be able to encourage them to build back better, working to redefine a better reality and normality. We acknowledge the roles of creators and creative scenes during this pandemic. They are the home of creativity and ingenious work. Creative scene to accommodate homegrown talent and adaptive in sensing the dynamics of our community will be able to survive the pandemic in its ideal sense. Creative scenes show a great deal of empowerment where everyone proud of their self-character and reflecting goes into good works. From the governmental point of view, it is important to iterate the significance of sport to creator and its creative scene. Thus, the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy has exercised several grant programs to Indonesian creative scene, from the government incentive program to the infrastructure-based aid for creative scene, all for the betterment of Indonesian creative scene, so that they can utilize their potential ability to its maximum value. Ladies and gentlemen, we should be able to understand that creators work their best self when we allow them to work without fear and guaranteeing their freedom of expression as their basis and spirit, while respecting the culture ingenious wherever they are. Creative scenes are one of the medium where they could gain that understanding and exercise those reality. In order to build back better, creative scenes should be practical toward their ideals. Modeling a health creative scene could show them how to operate in an ideal sense, where everyone could be comfortable to work their best. Through our initiative of GSING, we were researching this ideal model so that creative scene on the region could learn and committed to give creator to room from creation and innovation. Gaining through the momentum of International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development 2021, this result could embark as a beginning for good creative scene management. I, for one, hope that today's event will allow you to explore possibilities in supporting creative scene that respect culture and open for innovation, so that the jargon of Build Back Better won't stay as one-liner, but rather a start of better creative ecosystem in the region. I thank you and I wish you a good luck for today's event. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bapak Wisnu, for your speech. Before we move on to our next agenda, I would like to invite all participants and speakers to open their camera and take a quick photo session. Okay, I saw it. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Again, 1, 2. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Moving to our next agenda, I would like to invite our moderator for this session, Mr. Jonathan Wong. He is the Chief of Technology and Innovation from the UNESCOP. Mr. Jonathan will help us to moderate and lead our discussion for today. Jonathan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karina, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, wherever you are in the world. Firstly, thank you to our keynote speakers for really perfectly setting the scene for this panel discussion today. And again, to reiterate my thanks to the government of Indonesia for your leadership on this agenda, on this really important agenda, particularly and especially given that, as many have mentioned, this is the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. And we are joined here today by a really diverse mix of speakers and panelists who will share their perspective on the role of creative economies to build back better. Before we get started, let me very briefly introduce the panel. I'm very pleased to say we have an all-woman panel today as well, which is always very nice in this age. So firstly, we have Dina Deliana, who is the coordinator for the Global Center of Excellence and International Cooperation for Creative Economy. We have Miss Maria Tri Solistiani, founder of Paper Moon Puppet, who I'm really looking forward to finding more about. We have Malaya Del Rosario, Head of Arts and Creative Industries, British Council, Philippines. We have Carolina Quintana, who works on the Creative Economy Program at UNCTAD. And last but not least, we have Moe Chiba, Program Specialist for Culture Unit at UNESCO. So without further ado, maybe we can start with Dina first, and to share some of your perspectives on creative economy to build back better. Over to you, and let's prepare the slides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jonathan, for the opportunity. First, let me share my screen. Okay, so thank you so much. I would like to also send my gratitude to Ibu Armida, Pak Wisnu Bawa, Pak Febrian, Pak Bawa, and also Jonathan as the moderator. So I'm Dina from GSING, also from SBM ITB. I'd like to share our recent work with GSING that we just launched our book focusing on modeling a healthy creative scene. So actually, this book is one of our product from 2020, and this is initiated by 4 parties from GSING itself, SBM ITB, Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, and also Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And then, so before we start, probably I'd like to share the definition of creative scene. So we understand that creative scene is a localized, independent community of creative people or group with the same interests, regardless of with or without vision to grow together. So according to the reason on why we are focusing our study to the creative scene, we found that Indonesia, particularly the success of some influential creative subsectors, mostly started in scene, including in music, art, design, and fashions. Also, we found out that city as a unit of creative talent development sometimes deemed too big to measure and to capture a smaller group of talented individuals. And also, sometimes we found focusing on city for creative industry development have the risk to be confined to development for public space, which may not always relevant in nurturing creative talent. And we found that some characters of creative scenes are they're mostly organically formed, and they have particular skills and capabilities, and also they are mostly unstructured or semi-structured or have a simple organizational structure, and they mostly have highly connected members. Also, they are homogeneous to slight heterogeneity in terms of members' expertise, and they're conducive to innovation, and also they are very rich in terms of doing some activities or program. And in terms of source of fund, we found, according to our studies, we found that they got funding from voluntary contributions from the members, or from the commission works, or from the commercial arms, grants, sponsors, CSR, and sometimes crowdsourcing. Yeah, and here we try to ask to our respondents, which are more than 40 creative scenes from 5 cities in Indonesia, and also 4 countries in ASEAN. And here we found that the purpose of them joining a creative scenes mostly to encourage engagement among members, to exchange knowledge and information, also to create collective action, sometimes to induce collaborations and doing some capacity building and also contribute to giving impact to society. And we are doing some assessment to for the creative scenes from Indonesia, also from ASEAN, and we found that some factors are actually strong and some are quite weak in terms of some variables. And we found that the most important factors in building a healthy creative scene, healthy here means that they are sustainable and they are giving a positive impact to the society, and they're also giving a positive impact to the members as well. So according to this, the healthy creative scenes mostly relies on a good network, having good resources, having a good competencies, having a good social engagement, and understand their value, what to be delivered, and also having a shared resources. So in detail about this, we try to understand about some internal and external dimensions of the creative scenes. And here in terms of innovations, what they care most is about the process of the innovations. And in terms of how they manage their organizations, mostly they are tied each other because they have the same behavior, they have the same understanding about why they are doing this. And value exchange become really important in terms of running the business model in the creative scenes. And also here, they are emphasized more into value creations. They are always creating something which is innovative and considered as new, to their social and also to the environment. And in terms of resources, the most important resources in creative scenes mostly are human and also intellectuals. So this is in line with the creative industry's concept that the human and intellectuals become our main resources. And also capabilities and social participations also very important in the creative scenes to make sure that they are healthy and sustainable. In terms of activities and infrastructure, although they not all of them are actually having a really complete infrastructure, but what important for them is actually having a process or the activity of education and training. And if we try to understand what kind of support are needed by creative scenes, mostly are actually giving the access for good networks and alliance. And the second is about having access to the civil society. So this is some example, one of the examples that how we try to give a big picture to the creative scene that we try to study. So this is Forum Lenteng from Jakarta. We give descriptions and then we assess in terms of qualitative study about their network, innovations, values, business models, competence, resources, and etc. And this is how to can give a big picture on how they sustain and how they run their operation. So we also suggest in our book how to, according to our study, how to actually form a good creative scene, the structured one. They can start with the process of initiation, and then after they initiate, they can start to do some implementation in terms of how they do scheduling, task distributions, and then documentations, monitoring, evaluations, and then we suggest some actions on how they can sustain their creative scene. And also, according to our study, we found that key success factors for the creative scenes are, in terms of main aspects, it need to be open to new skills and collaborations. They need to have a good management, and they need to have a champion or a role model as a core of the scene. And they need to have frequent regenerations of member and staff. They need to have growth mindset of the member. And then at least they have a public space to utilize, not necessarily to be their own, but they can actually collaborate to utilize a public space. They need to have a platform for communications and many more. And some aspect that need to be avoided by creative scenes players. For example, here, is excessive attention to economic benefit among members, because sometimes it can actually initiate some frictions inside the creative members. And it is better that they're not heavily reliant to stakeholders for program implementations or funding. Thus, they need to think about how to finance their activities or program, and they need to creatively funding new source of fund, or do some activities which is can get funding from crowdsourcing activity and many more. Yeah. So business model is really important for them to have a sustainable activities and program. And here also we recommend some strategies to build some sustainable creative scenes. In terms of daily activities, they need to nurture culture among scene members, and for example, they need to reward and give reward and appreciations from inside and outside the scene. They need to have shared vision and agreed code of conduct. Yeah. And the most important is they need to have champions. So here, Mbak Ria from Peppermoon, yeah, she's actually a champion, yeah, from Peppermoon puppets. Yeah. So it's really important for the scene that they have one person to become a champion, then and know how to actually manage their scene, and know how to run we call it the business, yeah, because they need to fund their activities. If not, then they cannot sustain, yeah, their activities and operation. And how if a government or others, yeah, wants to help the growth of creative scene, at least they can give some grant, but grant here act as a trigger, not become something that always follow on each and every year. And infrastructure, because they need it very much, yeah, and then support mostly according to the program. Endorsement to give them more access to network or acknowledgement, access to market and collaborations, and giving them access to broader network, and some decentralization of government program. So I guess that's all from me. Hope it works. So if you like to know more about the book that just published, yeah, you can go to our websites at gsing.id. I guess that's all, Jonathan. It's I hope it's not more than 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Dina, for those very interesting insights. And just a reminder, I've seen somebody post a question in the chat, but please do keep the questions coming as you hear more about the insights from our speakers. So let's now turn to Maria, the founder of Papermoon Puppet, who I'm very intrigued to find out more about. So Maria, over to you. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you for having me in this awesome, beautiful, wonderful sharing session. I can say it's quite interesting that I'm here together with, like most of the people that came here came actually from like the government, or I can say like it's an institution. So I'm so nervous basically. But my name is Ria. I'm the founder and co-artistic director of Papermoon Puppet Theater. Papermoon Puppet Theater is a puppet company that was founded independently by me and Iwan Effendi on 2006. And then we've been running the company. Now there are only 5 of us, and we've been running the company independently. We did lots of tour abroad mostly, and since 2008 we initiated an international Biennale puppet festival that we called Pesta Boneka. Actually, last year was actually our 7th edition of Pesta Boneka, the International Biennale Puppet Festival, and it used to run independently as well. So since 2008 we always did fundraising. Papermoon performed in many different cities, and then we gained a little bit of funds from the tickets to run the festival. And it was very interesting to have the 7th edition, which was happened last year on October 2020, because we supposed to have, I think, 25 groups from 16 countries. And then it ended up with merrier countries joining because it was virtual. And in the beginning, we were thinking, should we still do that? Should we still run the festival? Because of the limitation that happened everywhere. we couldn't really invite those artists to come over, of course. And then when we just decided, I think as an artist, we still have to do something in this situation. We couldn't help with the like any kind of like structural helps of health or foods or whatever. But then what we can do is actually keep the fire, keep the engine alive. So that's how we decided to keep our festival run on October 2020. So here I would love to share to you, maybe Mbak Karina can help, the little video of the results of the festival. So please do, Mbak Karina.
Being at this festival is one of the things that helps connect us in this world. So thank you so much, Pesta Boneka.
wonderful. Of course, it's not the same as being there in person and feel everything, but I was really surprised how amazing the festival was, even though it was a virtual festival.
It's great to be connected to people live at the moment.
I already know the festival for a long time, and also you all, and I hope to go there once, but I never have that chance. So this is the first time that I can join your festival. So thank you so much for letting me have this chance.
Thank you for this festival. Very, very, very powerful.
I think we are look like a family. We are family. It's okay. Sorry.
You're
So
muted,
sorry. So last year we were actually having, we had 6,000 visitors in our website. And all over, they came from 538 cities, 64 countries, 5 continents, and meeting in one festival. So we found that this is what we can do as an artist. We can still keep the connection between people, and that we are actually together in this situation. So yeah, I think that's all from me from now. Thank you, Jonathan.
Maria. That was amazing. I think it's so important to maintain that human connection, even in this very digitalized world we live in. So no, thank you so much. That's very inspirational.
Thank you.
Let me now turn to Malaya Del Rosario, who from the British Council, to share some perspective on British Council's work on this agenda. Malaya, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, Jonathan. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone. And thank you so much for inviting the British Council to be part of this event. And hello to our hosts. Jonathan introduced me very briefly. So my name is Malaya Del Rosario. I'm Head of Arts and Creative Industries at the British Council in the Philippines. But recently I've also been an interim lead for our Creative Hubs for Good program in Southeast Asia. And so today I wanted to share a little bit of what's been happening with this program. And I think Dina talked a lot about creative scenes, and indeed the theme for today is about creative scenes. At the British Council, I think it's very similar. We use the word creative hubs, and I feel like, after watching Dina, hubs make the scenes, right? In case you're not familiar with the British Council, well, we are the UK's cultural relations organization. And so what we do is we create opportunities between the 100 countries we work in and the UK. And so we do this through art and culture, through education and the English language. And today I wanted to zoom in on our Creative Hubs for Good program, which has been running since 2018. And we're actually in the midst of evaluating this program. So I think this talk is very timely. So I can share a little bit about the impact that's coming out. So through this program, we've engaged with about 10,000 beneficiaries so far across Southeast Asia and the UK. And over, I think, more than 30 cities also within the region. And when we say creative hubs, these are, of course, the different hybrid groups that Dina mentioned earlier, like from Fab Labs to art collectives, but also networks, networks of creatives, artists, creative enterprises that can exist either physically in a space or digitally, even more and more, especially today. And they do a lot of programming and community engagement. They make sure in a way that the creative scenes stay healthy, right? So we do this through, capacity building and skills training, through creating networks for them, because we found that networks are really valuable when it comes to them being able to develop their work or make their businesses grow. And of course, through policy dialogue and engagement, such as the one that we're having today. So I think I'm not sure if my presentation is being shared, actually. There, okay.
There it is now.
I think we can skip to Malaysia, to the Malaysia slide. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So just some of the impact that's coming out of that program, right? So as I mentioned, we do this in Malaysia, in Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, and of course connecting our work with the UK. So 6 countries, more or less, although of course a lot of our events are attended by people worldwide. And just some of the things that are coming out of Malaysia, for example, 61% of the hubs and the leaders we've been working with noticed improvements in their knowledge about their role in society, because most of the time creative scenes or hubs are misunderstood, and they themselves don't fully appreciate their role and the positive impact that they can bring, right? And then 77% of hubs also reported that because of the program and through the program, they were able to understand the importance of having a very good business model and fundraising techniques. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so yeah, all right. So in Vietnam, just numbers, 86% of participants say that they now have more knowledge on strategic planning and implementation. 93% say that, you know, they have more knowledge on how to generate income. And then next slide, please. Yeah, all right. And then in the Philippines, 93% say that they have improved knowledge on how to manage their hubs, so how to manage their space, their organization, their networks, which is also obviously very important. And all the respondents reported that they have actively given support to or received support from other hubs. So as you can see, like the impact that's coming out of this program is very multidimensional, you know, from economic to social to cultural. And I think it's also important to say environmental, because a lot of the hubs are also working in the areas of upcycling or circular economy. And when we're talking about sustainable development, I think surprisingly, you know, the environmental side is not talked about enough. So next slide, please. Just to summarize, and I'm referring to a report that we recently commissioned. Actually, the sample of hubs was mostly from the Philippines, but it's called Generating Creative Value and Resilience in the Pandemic Times. So the report was able to kind of tease out some of the qualities that makes a healthy creative scene or creative hub, right? The first is that they are very active in network building and community building. Internally within their organizations, but also externally, so reaching out to the wider stakeholders. And this social programming forms the foundation of their resilience, right? And so it's called social capital, right? So the hubs that were able to remain functional during the pandemic, said that they were able to do this because of the social capital that they had saved up. Right, and there's a hub actually in Indonesia called Good School. I think they're actually built on the idea of having social capital, or I think in Indonesia they call it nongkrong, right? The hangout culture. And we have this also in the Philippines, a similar idea of tambay. So the tambay culture, you know, you're just hanging out, but actually people don't see this as necessarily a waste of time. People see this as valuable for relationship building. And also the report said that because of the British Council Hubs for Good program and the various opportunities and network buildings that we did, the hubs who were part of this program were able to better navigate the pandemic and become more resilient by tapping into the relationships that they developed pre-COVID. And of course, number two is they have an ethic of care. And this is really important because this engenders mutual support, which is especially important now when people are feeling a little bit lost. We need to have that ethic of care, and in a way, like just be more empathetic towards people's different situations, right? And the hubs that we interviewed said that they regularly checked with with their members, so the people they work with, communications, but also through platforms and events. They would have coffee gatherings and things like that, talking about their personal situations. And then number three is they were able to build up member adaptation through collective sense making. So not only were they conscious that they had to be resilient as organizations, but they made sure that they also empowered the wider community, their members, to also become resilient. And because of this, their members, and when I say members, these are really the artists, the individual artists, the creative enterprises. They were able to think of ways to problem solve, so better ways to problem solve towards positive responses, despite the difficulties. And then number four is they were entrepreneurial. And so obviously, apart from like being able to come up with more relevant revenue streams, some of the hubs we interviewed said that they had to close their spaces to save on costs. And of course, most of them had to transfer digitally, you know, they had to organize digital events or develop learning content. But apart from that, the report also said that sometimes actually the unstable, the fact that they have unstable business models allowed them to also shift this a lot more easily. So, one of the hubs in the Philippines called Common Room, they actually opened an account, for example, on Patreon. So this is more or less a new mobile app, and they use this to showcase the skills of their members. I think traditionally Common Room relied a lot on retail sales, but because of the pandemic, they had to explore this in a way patron model of a revenue stream through Patreon. So the last is they have a high degree of fluidity and diversity, and again this is due to their kind of flexible and semi-open business models to begin with. So that's also very important. And I added something here, which is that they were digitally literate, right? This wasn't part of the original 5 reasons in the report, but I thought this is really important. And when we say digitally literate, it doesn't mean that you have to be techie or you have to know coding, right? It just means that you know how to use technology as a driver for your work, as a positive driver for your work. And the report does show that there is a lot of evidence towards this rapid digitalization. And I think the trick is for the hubs to be able to get to know and decide for themselves how they want to navigate between, across face-to-face to digital programming. Because most of the time, these are not contrasting spheres. They actually intersect a lot. And I think these days they intersect all the time, right? So, okay, which leads me to actually our project that I wanted to share you a little bit, and I'm closing after this one. Next slide, please, which is Creative Communities Learning Lab. And we are actually launching this tomorrow. So again, this event is very timely, and I'm very happy to invite you to join the launch event. Through this and through the conversations and consultations we've been having, with stakeholders all over the world, we have come up with this as one of our responses. So based on like the changing needs, knowledge needs of our stakeholders, we developed 3 courses, 3 online courses that you can take on your own. So the courses are free, they're dynamic, they're accessible. And we worked with hub leaders from Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, Southeast Asia and the UK to do this. Because there are a lot, despite, sometimes we may be feeling that the future is not very clear. Despite this, there have been a lot of inspiring and success stories from different parts of the world. And we will be sharing those stories through the courses. So the first theme is on digital community strategy and management. And the second course is on new ways to monetize creative work. And the third is how to bring your training online. Because hubs actually have a lot of trainings and workshops as part of their programs. So how can you now bring this online, right? I'll share the link in a little bit to this one, right? Okay, and so for this, we also brokered a collaboration to help us turn this idea into reality. So we're working with Creative Friction, a consultancy in the UK who specializes in community building, and Makerspace Manila in the Philippines. And so, yeah, that's launching tomorrow, but of course the courses will be available beyond the event. So just in closing, and can we show the next slide? Of course, the British Council welcomes the year, so we welcome the UN Year for Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. And we hope to continue our support for creative scenes and hubs all over the world, because how we support the arts and creative organizations now will most probably determine how well they will be able to weather the next crisis. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to our panel discussion later on.
Thank you very much, Malaya. And the British Council have been a very good partner of ESCAP for many, many years now on creative and social economies, as Ibu Amida mentioned earlier on. So thank you so much for that. Now let's turn to some members of the UN family. Let me first turn to Carolina Quintana from UNCTAD to share some thoughts on the creative scene. Carolina, over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here to participate on behalf of UNCTAD. I would like to start by thanking our hosts and of course to thank Indonesia, with whom we have been working together for the last 2-3 years for championing the UN resolution on the International Year of Creative Economy. Now, this resolution, as have been mentioned already, is very important since it placed the creative economy as an important tool for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And what it has been doing is highlighting the incredible work of many artists, creative entrepreneurs, cultural agents, including youth and women and governments around the world. So as we said in one of our articles, the creative economy has its year in the sun. So thank you again. I mean, of course, this resolution was supported by many countries, which gives it even more importance. UNCTAD jointly with UNESCO are the focal points for the implementation of this resolution. And as such, we have created in our UNCTAD website a roadmap of events for countries, organizations, NGOs, the civil society who want to mark this year. And this is important because what we have seen is an incredible number of initiatives coming from all parts of the world, and they are actually really giving a lot of visibility at local level of their creative industries, of what they are doing and how they are doing it and why it's important. So the message, if you want, it's been spread all over the world. We could not think of a better time for this resolution to come forward in the middle of this pandemic, where, you know, the sector needs so much help and support. So I think that in those terms, we are lucky that we are all joining forces, UN agencies, NGOs, and all the actors involved in trying to make this year a very useful year to highlight what the creative economy can do for sustainable development. I don't know if you're aware of our work in UNCTAD. We created the program in 2004. We do research, policy research, policy analysis. Yes, and we have in the screen you see our classification of creative industries, which, by the way, we are in the process of updating. We are now setting up, we have set up regional groupings from Asia, America, Africa, and we have involved a number of experts from different regions in order to help us to update this classification, because with technological advances and progress, what we have seen is a lot of creative goods becoming creative services. And so we see that the classification that we have doesn't capture anymore the potential of the creative industries. So this is a work in progress. We will hold other meetings in the coming months, but our aim is actually to come to our UNCTAD 50 meeting, which is the ministerial meeting with all member states that will be online. But we will have a series of events on creative economy, and among those we will have an expert meeting on these statistical aspects, which are very important to capture the flows of creative goods and services. and which are the countries that are more dynamic in terms of trade, and where are the market opportunities. So we really believe in continuing the work on the statistics. Also, we create platforms for the promotion of the creative economy as a tool for economic diversification. And so we have intergovernmental dialogues. Last year, we had an expert meeting on creative economy, and we try to look at all the aspects that influence the development of creative economies. So again, we're looking at ICTs, how this is affecting, and how digitalization has become a very empowering tool for the development of these industries. As Malaya was saying, with the training on digitalization, they are so important. Next slide, please. So we will be continuing these dialogues because everything it's changing, and with the pandemic, I think we need. It's a difficult period, but I think that difficult periods also represent opportunities to rethink the way that things are being done and how to adapt. And here I think the creative industries really are very well positioned, as presented by Maria in that by Dina, I'm sorry, in the presentation of the creative scene, when she was talking about how creative people tend to be more innovative, more oriented to finding innovative solutions and problem solving. So I think here we all need to get together because we are still going through this very uncertain period, and we will all need to get together to find new solutions and build better back, as is the theme of the conference. So the creative industries shows a lot of potential for development gains. And one of those, as we saw, was that recently with COVID, the creative industries are developing alongside the digital economies. In some part of the world, the demand for cultural and creative content has intensified throughout the pandemic, like for music, like for cinema, for museums, for video games. And this is because they are strongly linked to e-commerce. For example, Netflix added more than 16 million subscribers in the first 3 months of last year in 2020. And I mean, that says so much about creativity flourishing, even during these difficult times, and even during teleworking, giving more people perhaps more time to think, to reflect. Of course, now we have seen that the numbers have dropped. We just saw that the number of customers reached only 3.9 million for the first 3 months of 2021. But then again, it's also, according to the experts, due to the delays produced by COVID. Of course, many studios for recording, many facilities are not accessible by artists. They really have to struggle. But when there is a will, there is a way. So as Maria was saying, by keeping the festival alive, I mean, to keep the festival alive and keeping people connected, that is fantastic. That's what we have seen, and we can only be grateful for what they're doing. So probably as many people turned to digital platforms and technologies to connect with audiences and consumers, they have found a way to sustain themselves. But there are many challenges that have been seen. We had been in contact with some creators in Kenya, for example, and there have been difficulties for creatives to secure royalties for artists, some issues with author rights, intellectual property rights, privacy legislation and protection, illegal downloads, piracy, etc. I mean, all of this is part of the digital ecosystem that will have an impact on how creators monetize and increase the equitable distribution of income in the digital space. So it would be very interesting to see how British Council now that is working on these new trainings for improving the monetization opportunities in the digital environment. So there are blocks and there are gaps. There are also differences between countries in terms of infrastructure. You know, in some like in Asian region, we can see that the situation is very different from Africa. But I want to refer to UNCTAD's latest report on the Technology and Innovation Report 2021, which urges all developing nations to prepare for a period of deep and rapid technological change that will profoundly affect markets and societies. And all countries will need to pursue science, technology, and innovation policies appropriate to their development stage and economic, social, and environmental conditions. And this is very important because it is about building digital skills among the students, among the workforce, among the creative industries. And because if we think about the trends towards—
Carolina, my apologies. Could you close out the next 30? We're very short of time.
Okay, sorry. Yes,
so sorry, we're going to have to close it very, very soon.
Sure, Jonathan, no problem. If we can go to the next slide, please.
Very briefly.
So let me just finish with key messages. Asia is one of the most dynamic regions in creative industries with a large pool of young, talented artists. And it has a very well-developed tourism hub. There is a lot of potential for collaboration within the region. It has big IT platforms, excellent universities, infrastructure. And so it makes sense to think of Asia of coming up as a very important region for scaling up the growth of creative industries. We also think that there will be a lot of opportunities on socially focused startups related to circular economy, creative industries, including in gastronomy, in tourism. They need to work together. It's an ecosystem. And of course, the collaborations facilitated within the region, the advantages of working with proximity, large markets, sharing costs, and to leverage on ICT, which, as I just mentioned, is one of the trends that we can see for the forthcoming years. I think I will stop there. Thank you very much. And I hope to continue the discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolina, for sharing all the great work UNCTAD are doing. And last but not least, we have Moe to share some thoughts on UNESCO's work in this space. Again, Moe, the curse of being last is that we're frantically out of time.
Yeah,
so if you could be as brief as you can, that would be great.
Conscious of the restrictions. Okay, may I request our friends from MOFA to put my slide, PPT slide. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for inviting UNESCO to this panel discussion. What is healthy creative sector? That is a key question of this meeting. As UN organizations start standing for education and culture, UNESCO has constantly maintained that cultural industry is cultural issue as much as economical. So today, a large part of artistic and cultural contents reach to us in the form of consumer goods and services, such as books, music recordings, movies, and TV shows, which are, of course, increasingly available through internet. And it is through these goods and services that most of us get exposed to new ideas, discover different cultures, and form our worldview. And because of this specific nature of cultural industry that touches upon our emotions and intelligence, UNESCO considers that it cannot be subject only to economic logic, but should be also understood from its cultural perspective. In particular, UNESCO has constantly emphasized that the ideas, concepts, and artistic expressions that are transmitted through these cultural goods and services should be diverse, reflecting diverse views of diverse people. So imagine a world where there's only one book to read or one music to listen that is determined by a small group of people. Nobody wants to live in such a dictatorial world, and yet we are not far from that situation if we only push economic agenda of cultural industries. Next slide, please. History of 20 centuries has demonstrated that capitalism and its free market logic has not necessarily promoted democracy or equitable society as it pretends, but rather it has led to industrial mergers and monopolies. And this is what we witness in the domain of creative industry as well. The slides, it shows that we know well that the global level, 80% of music industry is monopolized by 3 big companies. And for instance, in Southeast Asia, 80% of video on demand services is dominated by 6 or 7 companies in the region. Next slide, please. At domestic level, same imbalance is also perceptible. On the slide is a famous study in Indonesia on how different social groups are represented on the TV, or rather not represented equally. Right. Next slide, please. And this is why back in 2005, UNESCO General Conference adopted a new international convention on the protection and promotion of the diverse cultural expressions. This convention affirms that dual nature, culture and economy of cultural industry, and urges countries to put into place policy and measures to achieve the following 4 goals that are considered indispensable to ensure that cultural industry is inclusive, democratic, and therefore reflect the diversity of people and opinions, both at national and global level. So out of these 4 goals, number 4 on human rights, I think, is particularly important, because without the concern for respect of freedom of expression or socioeconomic rights of artists, such as fair remunerations or gender equity or voice of various minorities, I think there's no healthy creative scenes. It's a monopolies and a dictatorship. Next slide, please. I'm not going to elaborate on this table, but this is just to show a monitoring framework with a series of indicators or a sort of checklist for the government assess if they have adequate policies and measures to ensure the diverse cultural expressions. The state parties to that UNESCO convention have to report every 4 years to UNESCO on what they have done against each indicator. So it is a good way to check if the government has healthy policy for cultural industries. And so one of the important indicators is whether they have a policy for freedom of expression, gender inclusiveness, etc. Last slide, please. So as Indonesia and whole of Asia invest increasingly in creative economy, UNESCO hopes that this concern for diverse, ethical, and inclusive approach to cultural industry be part of your policy agenda. And to close, I just want to share with you that in Indonesia, UNESCO is currently working with a group of stakeholders to mainstream the concept of gender inclusiveness in the film industry, and also the artistic freedom and the artistic right. We are also supporting some 400 creative youth living around different World Heritage sites in Indonesia to nurture their business skills. And I fully agree with observation made by Dina and also Malaya about the importance of networking within the communities of creative people as such. Because during the pandemic, what they told us is that what saved them most was this opportunity to constantly keep exchanging their ideas and share their problems, so that they can actually be united in their problems. And what we also encourage during the pandemic is this cross-disciplinary activities amongst the creative youth. So for instance, those who are doing the heritage tour tied up with those people who are doing the gaming app, and also the food, street food, to come up with online tour of the street food of Indonesia. They also worked with the local street performers to also include that as a destination. So that kind of cross-disciplinary ideas actually gave rise to new products and services that also saved them somehow during the pandemic. This said, I think we are still working on unknown terrain on how to make creative industry sustainable in this difficult time. And I very much look forward to further exchange with everybody in this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Moe. Indeed, thank you to all our panelists sharing those very interesting insights on the creative scene from a whole range of different perspectives. Sadly, we're nearing the end. So may I just take the opportunity again to thank our opening speakers, the keynote speaker, and the moderator, and the panelists as well, and hand back to Karina to introduce our final speaker for the closing remarks. Thank you all. Over to you, Karina.
Okay. Thank you all for our moderators and our panelists for the remarkably interesting and insightful discussion. Before we end today's session, I would like to invite Bapak Hari Prabowo, the Director for Development, Economic and Environmental Affairs from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Indonesia, to give his closing remarks for this webinar. Bapak Hari, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Karina, and thank you, Jonathan. I just wish to thank all panelists, Dr. Dina Deliana, Ms. Moe Chiba, Ms. Carolina Quintana, Ms. Malaya Del Rosario, Ms. Riatri Sulistiani, for your thoughtful presentation and ideas. I believe you have shared many important points that can contribute to our common effort in nurturing and developing healthy creative scenes, and also that gives idea on how to foster stronger international partnership and collaboration in that direction. So once again, on behalf of the Indonesian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I wish to thank all panelists as well as ESCAP for collaborating with us in organizing this side event, and I hope it's been a useful event for all participants.
Okay, now we're really at the end of our session. On behalf of Ministry of Foreign Affairs Indonesia, I would like to thank again all of our distinguished guests, moderator, panelists, and all of the participants. We hope to see you again on another event. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, and stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.